Your '97 Civic just died in the Walmart parking lot. Not the engine, the transmission, the expensive part, the part that makes a mechanic suck air through his teeth before he even gives you the number. You're standing there in the heat, phone in hand, calculator app open, doing the math you never thought you'd be doing at 34 years old. Buy or rent or buy. Two words that used to mean which apartment has better parking now feel like they're deciding the rest of your life. Meanwhile, 3 blocks away, your old college roommate is power washing his driveway. Same age, similar job, similar paycheck. He bought 4 years ago. He's not thinking about transmissions or rent increases or any of it. He's thinking about whether to plant tomatoes this year. Same starting point, same decade, wildly different Saturday afternoons. My name's Mick, and today we're tackling the question that's been quietly tearing apart group chats, dinner tables, and Reddit threads for the last few years. Is renting actually throwing money away, or is buying the real trap? And I'll tell you right now, almost everything you've heard about this from both sides is built on math that conveniently leaves out the one number that changes everything. We'll get to that. But first, hit subscribe because untangling this one is going to take some receipts. Let's start with the sentence that's been repeated so many times it's basically scripture. Renting is throwing your money away. You've heard a parent say it. A real estate agent definitely said it. Maybe you've said it to someone else, half believing it yourself. Here's the thing about that sentence, it's not wrong exactly. It's just missing about 80% of the picture. And the part it's missing is the part that decides whether buying actually makes you richer or just makes you feel richer while quietly making you poorer. So let's do this properly. Let's actually run the numbers because the numbers tell a much weirder story than either side of this argument wants to admit. Picture a $400,000 home, which, by the way, is now roughly the median home price in the US, not a mansion, not a starter shack, just a regular 3-bedroom in a regular suburb. You put 10% down because most people aren't sitting on $80,000 in cash. That's $40,000 out of pocket before you've bought a single piece of furniture. Your mortgage on the remaining $360,000 at a 6.5% rate over 30 years comes out to about $2,275 a month for principal and interest alone. Now stack on property taxes, call it $400 a month depending on your state. Homeowner's insurance, another $150. PMI, because you put less than 20% down, roughly $180 a month until you cross that threshold. Add it up and you're at $3,005 a month before you've turned on a single light. Now here's where it gets interesting because that $3,005 isn't your cost of living there. It's just your monthly outflow. And almost none of that distinction gets explained to first-time buyers, because the distinction is the entire point of this video. That $3,005, here's what's actually a cost, meaning money that's gone forever just like rent. The interest portion of your mortgage, property taxes, insurance, PMI, and maintenance. Maintenance alone, by the way, is typically budgeted at 1% of the home's value per year. So on a $400,000 house, that's $4,000 a year or about $333 a month just for things breaking. Water heaters don't ask permission. But the principal portion of your mortgage payment, the part that's actually paying down the loan, that's not a cost. That's forced savings. It's money you're not spending, you're transferring from your checking account into your house's equity, like a very slow, very illiquid savings account that also happens to come with a roof. In year one of that mortgage, roughly $605 a month goes toward principal. The rest, about $1,670, is interest, which is gone forever just like rent. So let's add up the actual gone forever cost of homeownership in year one. $1,670 interest plus $400 taxes plus $150 insurance plus $180 PMI plus $333 maintenance. That's $2,733 a month that simply evaporates, compared to the $3,005 total outflow. Now let's go find Carmen. Carmen rents a comparable 3-bedroom across town for $2,200 a month. On paper, Carmen looks like she's winning. She's paying $2,200, the homeowner is paying $3,005. Carmen's saving $805 a month, right? Not so fast. Because the homeowner's $605 a month in principal isn't gone, it's sitting in their house. So really, the homeowner's true cost is $2,733 and Carmen's is $2,200. Carmen is still ahead by $533 a month. Stay with that number because it's about to become the most important number in this entire video. Here's the part nobody puts in the brochure. That $40,000 down payment didn't vanish into thin air either. If Carmen never bought a house, that $40,000 is sitting in an index fund instead, quietly earning roughly 8% a year, which is about $3,200 in the first year alone, money the homeowner doesn't have because theirs is locked inside drywall. So now Carmen has two advantages. She's paying $533 less a month in true cost, and her $40,000 is working for her in the market instead of sitting frozen in a down payment. If she takes that monthly $533 difference and invests it too at 8% annually, over 30 years that grows to roughly $800,000. Combined with the growth on the original $40,000, which alone becomes about $400,000 over 30 years at 8%, Carmen's total investment portfolio after 3 decades is sitting somewhere north of $1.2 million. Meanwhile, the homeowner after 30 years of payments owns a house outright. And that house, assuming a historically normal 3.5% annual appreciation, is now worth roughly $1.13 million. Read those two numbers again. Renting and investing the difference, about $1.2 million in liquid assets. Buying and living in the house for 30 years, about $1.13 million in home equity. They're basically the same. Which means the entire renting throws money away argument and the entire buying is always better argument are both, technically, kind of wrong, or more precisely, they're both right under different assumptions, and almost nobody ever states the assumptions out loud. So if the math is roughly a wash, why does this debate feel so emotionally loaded? Why do people on both sides talk about it like it's a referendum on whether you've made good life choices? Because the math is a wash on paper, but real life isn't lived on paper. And this is where I need to introduce the number that actually decides this whole thing, the number almost nobody talks about because it's not glamorous and it doesn't fit in a TikTok caption. That number is, how long are you actually going to stay? Here's why it's the whole game. Buying a home comes with massive one-time costs that have nothing to do with the mortgage. Closing costs when you buy, typically 2 to 5% of the purchase price. On our $400,000 house, call it $10,000. Then when you sell, realtor commissions alone are typically 5 to 6%, another $20,000 to $24,000, assuming the house has appreciated a bit. Add moving costs, potential repairs to make it sellable, and you're looking at $30,000 to $35,000 in pure transaction costs, just for the privilege of buying and then later selling. If you stay in that house for 30 years, $35,000 in transaction costs spread out is basically a rounding error. It's nothing. It's noise. If you stay in that house for 3 years, that $35,000 is catastrophic. You'd need the home to appreciate enormously just to break even on the buying and selling alone, before we even talk about whether renting would have been cheaper monthly. This is the part the real estate industry will never say out loud, because their entire business model depends on transactions. But here it is, buying a home you might sell in 3 to 5 years isn't really an investment decision. It's a bet that your local market appreciates fast enough in a short enough window to outrun roughly $35,000 in friction costs. Sometimes that bet pays off. A lot of the time it doesn't, and people quietly eat that loss and never tell anyone, because admitting you lost money on your house feels like admitting you failed at being an adult. Let's go back to Carmen and her old college roommate. Let's call him Derek, since apparently he's into tomatoes now. Derek bought 4 years ago and he's planning to stay for at least another decade, maybe longer. It's near his job, his kids' school. His whole life is built around that zip code. For Derek, the math is leaning toward buying being the right call, because he's amortizing those transaction costs over 10 plus years. And every year he stays, the forced savings portion of his payment compounds a little more in his favor. Carmen, on the other hand, has changed apartments twice in the last 5 years. New job, new neighborhood, life still figuring itself out. If Carmen bought that $400,000 house today and had to sell in 3 years, say her job relocates her, she could do everything right, make every payment on time, watch the house appreciate a totally normal 3.5% a year, and still walk away having lost money once you account for the buying and selling costs. Not because she made a bad decision, because the timeline itself was the bad fit, and nobody told her that timeline was the variable that mattered. This is the part that should genuinely change how you think about this entire debate. The question was never really renting versus buying. The question was always how long am I staying, and buying versus renting is just the output of that answer, not the input. Now, quick aside, the process I just walked you through, breaking a financial myth down into the one hidden variable that actually drives it, that's not improvisation. It's a method, and it's the kind of thing I work through with people in a community I built for folks researching and building content in spaces like personal finance. If that's ever been something you've thought about, there's more info in the description. No pressure, it'll be there. Okay, back to the house. I can already hear some of you typing. But Nick, rent goes up every year and my mortgage payment is locked in forever. And you're right, that's real and it matters. A fixed-rate mortgage is genuinely one of the few inflation hedges available to a regular person. If Carmen's rent rises 3% a year for 30 years, her $2,200 a month eventually becomes about $5,300 a month by year 30. That's a real cost, and it's the strongest argument buying has. But here's the catch nobody mentions. In our model, Carmen isn't just paying rent and doing nothing else. She's investing that $533 a month difference, plus the $40,000 she never spent on a down payment. As her rent climbs, her invested portfolio is also climbing, and historically the market has outpaced rent growth by a wide margin over any 20-30-year period. So the rent goes up forever argument is true, but it's not the silent killer it's framed as long as the person renting is actually doing something productive with the gap. The danger isn't renting. The danger is renting and spending the difference on a nicer car, and that's really the uncomfortable twist hiding under this entire topic. Buying a house doesn't make you wealthy by itself. Renting doesn't make you poor by itself. What actually determines your outcome is whether you do anything with the difference, whatever that difference happens to be in either direction. A homeowner who buys a house and never thinks about money again is making forced progress through the principal payments slowly automatically. A renter who invests the gap is making the same kind of progress just through a different mechanism. The renter who does neither, doesn't invest, doesn't save, just spends whatever's left, that's the person actually throwing money away. It was never the rent. It was the absence of a plan for the gap. So let's go back to that Walmart parking lot because I think this is where it actually lands. Standing there with a dead transmission staring at the buy-rent decision like it's a referendum on your life, here's what I'd actually want you to know. The decision in front of you isn't which one makes me a real adult. It's not a moral test. It's a math problem with one real input. How long do you think you'll be where you are? If the answer is I have no idea, my life is in flux, renting and investing the difference isn't a consolation prize. It's the financially correct move, full stop. And if the answer is I'm staying here for the long haul, this is my zip code now, buying isn't a trap, it's forced savings with a roof attached. Derek isn't winning because he bought. Carmen isn't losing because she rents. They're both just at different points in their own timelines, and the only mistake either of them could actually make is not having a plan for the money that isn't going toward housing, whichever direction that money flows. One last thing, the boring sentence. I'm not a financial advisor and none of this is financial advice, just patterns and math with real numbers attached. Run your own numbers for your own situation because your interest rate, your local rent prices, and your timeline are going to be different from the example here. If this changed how you're thinking about your own rent versus buy decision, drop a comment and tell me which side of this you're actually on right now and how long you think you're staying where you are. I read every one. And if you want to go deeper on the first number that matters before any of this, the one that determines whether you're even ready to have this conversation, I made a video on that too, and it's right there on screen. I'll see you in it.